actually too bad. I placed my phone on my steering wheel right. Whoa. Stay right there. Okay, it's not that bad. I forgot my wide-angle lens, and so just changes the dynamic a little bit. I am here again at Taco Bell, which overlooks the area where my daughters are learning to surf. Day number 3 of 5. Been able to get a lot of work done, which is fantastic, but it's so cold today here on the coast just south of San Francisco that I'm wearing like triple layers, which again is, if you're in the Bay, if you live in San Francisco, always wear layers all the time. It's just smart. Don't be dumb, be smart. Unless you want to be cold or hot or just cold. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about building web apps. Yesterday we talked about writing out the feature list, essentially a feature list, and more importantly the questions that you should answer in regards to why you're even creating an app in the first place. These should be questions that really challenge your thinking around motive. And I think there are also questions, as I mentioned, that you can ask your friends, colleagues, peers, relatives, whoever. But these are questions that you should ask other people to get a variety of perspective, right, on what you're trying to build. It also creates an open dialogue between you and other people who may end up actually being users of that product if you eventually bring it to market and share it publicly. That isn't always the case. Sometimes I build apps for myself and exclusively for myself, so I provision them for my own device or for my notebook computers. Geez, I'm stuffy. And no one else gets to see them, which is fine. I build them for me because I just need to solve a problem. Building a web app or an iOS app or whatever is the best solution. So after you write the feature list down and you marinate on that for a while, which I think is really important. I cannot I cannot tell you how important it is to just sit and think about what you're building. Not just what you're building, but why. Why are you building this? So after you've marinated on that for a bit, then it's time to actually begin designing. And I'm not a designer. I've never held that title, and I will never hold that title. I'm a product designer insofar as I, design products, I guess, kind of. I'm not a designer. I don't have those skills. I don't have that skill set in my body and my blood. I've just been around long enough to be equipped enough to have my apps not look like absolute dog shit, essentially. And it's kind of like one of those things where in any industry, you may not be a specialist or may not be an expert. In an industry, in a vocation, in a job, there are primary skill sets, and then there's a number of secondary skill sets, a lot of secondary skill sets. And you may become really good at these primary ones, but you pick up on these secondary skills just as a consequence of being close to them, if that makes sense. So being around designers, working with designers, hiring designers, building a ton of product in the context of a number of different teams, like I've picked up enough tools and skill sets within the confines of design so I don't make an absolute fool of myself. That is a long-winded way of getting to the point. Apologize. So how I go about designing a product is very simple. I get a notebook. A big one. This is a big one. And I like Moleskine notebooks. Those are my favorite. I always get unruled notebooks. I just love look at all that beautiful white space. It's so pretty. It's begging to be used. And so what I do is I start concepting out very simply what I think I'm trying to build. And it's not there's no rocket science to this. I do it like this, but I have also often used these printable templates, which I printed out one this morning. You can just Google printable mobile UI UX templates or some iteration like that, and you can find these. They're all over the web. And these can be very useful. And this one has even a dot matrix, if you see very closely. So you can. What I like to use is just my plain notebook, and I begin to draft out essentially the user experience. And what I do is I design the body, and I go frame by frame, or screen by screen rather, everything that I think the user will encounter. And so a couple of things to note with my designs. A couple things to note with the way that I go about designing is I keep it very simple. Every screen is its own little screen. I keep it at a very high level, so I don't typically write text within the frame. I just scribble for text. I use large kind of images or block. And what I'm trying to get, at least in this first stage, is a really clear idea of how this would feel. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm answering the question, or specifically, I'm making sure that the result, the outcome of experiencing this workflow, this fairly linear workflow, is exactly what I'm trying to solve, or the problem that I'm trying to solve is experienced through the screens. Now that might sound fairly intuitive and fairly self-evident and obvious, right? Like, clearly you would be designing an app to solve the problem. But what ends up happening for a lot of people is they end up with a copious amount of extra screens. Things that they feel like they're supposed to have or required to have, like about pages or settings pages, or like screens, or sharing screen, like all this additional crap that doesn't actually solve the core problem. Because you can always add the frills, you can always add like all those extra screens, but I never include those in the original concepts, at least the first pass of the design. And it's very, very difficult. It takes a long time for you to have the discipline and the composure to not add all that extra bullshit to an initial concept. I use arrows to indicate the progression of a user through the app, and my goal, kind of a little bit of a fluid goal. It's not, I'm not religious about this goal, but for the first initial concept, especially for a mobile app, I try to keep it less than 10 screens. Anything more than that feels like, it doesn't feel like a simple product at that point. It feels like a very complex product. And if it's more than 10, I don't think I think it means that I haven't identified clearly what I'm trying to do, or the experience that I'm trying to have when I use this app. That of course is fluid. We might have 11 or 12 or whatever, and you still achieve the core. Like for this first iteration, right, I have, if I include the title screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as the core. And I've added 2 screens for that recurring option that I talked about, which is not necessary. I had a question mark around that. And then I added another 2 for credits and options. So that's 10 total, but 6 core screens. So I followed my own kind of pattern or my own little internal principle around less than 10. I have 10 exactly if I do the full gamut of this experience, right? But otherwise, it's really just 6 screens, I think. And so the hypothesis here is, I believe that I can have a complete, like a legitimately complete experience in 6 screens. And if that worked really well, man, one, I'd be a very happy customer of my own product, and 2, I would have landed on something that I feel like, if successful, I can expand on. A very firm foundation. And that's it. I have a second kind of iteration on this page. So on July 1st, 2017, I wrote the first iteration, and then 12 days later, on July 13th, I redid it. Kind of added a little bit of context, some swipe screens, you know, like, hey, what would happen if I swipe left? But the number of screens on the second iteration is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I added 2, but that's because I built in the canonical, I built in the recurring. So anyway, that's it. That's it. And what I've done since July 13th, it's almost been a month, or maybe 3 weeks, is I have sat on this. I've done some more designs as well, but I've iterated on those core designs, and I've shared them with other people. I've shared them with a very small cadre of folks. Now it's getting hot. Take this off now. So I've shared it with a few folks to get their feedback, their candid feedback. Oh, let's turn that off. Oh my God, it's toasty in here. So I've shared that with a couple folks, got some feedback, and just sat with it. Again, right? Like, I have a full-time job as a startup founder in my startup. I've got a lot of responsibilities. I've got things I have to do with the kids, like take them to surf camp. Like, so this is a really great example, I think, of a side, super small, simple app project that I'm putting together as I have time. There's no time pressure here, and there's no structure, there's no grand order, no scheme, no business planning, no business modeling. I'm not trying to do anything fantastic. I'm just putting something together for myself, and I want to enjoy the process. And I want zero pressure. Not I want a little bit of pressure. No, I want absolutely no pressure to deliver, because I shouldn't have to. And I think as a consequence of doing it this way, I really enjoy the process. And I think if you don't enjoy the process of building, if you're all about just the end result, I think that's counterproductive. I don't say that's bad. It's not helpful. You want to enjoy building. And so I'm trying to maximize, or optimize rather, my enjoyment of building, because you know, I don't know. Well, life is just too short not to enjoy what you do, I guess. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm kind of taking this day by day, right? I'm unprofessional here, but this is how I go about putting together these small things, and so hopefully that's helpful. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one, guys.